Today we're looking at Psalms 98, a worship song. O sing unto the Lord a new song, for he hath done marvelous things. His right hand and his holy arm hath gotten him the victory. And again, when we're looking at the word song, this is not something that he could do or he might do, but it's something he either will do or he has done. And it's a specific thing in the life of the believer or the life of this community. And it's a new song. It's something that's happened now that God meant to have a living relationship with these people, not just I brought you through the Red Sea, I brought you through the Jordan, I gave you the inheritance, now you guys play nice. To continually walk among his people, to continually deal with his people, to have this continuing koinonia, as I take a Greek word from there. It's a living relationship, which is a day by day. And so he hath shown his salvation, his righteousness hath he openly shown in the sight of the heathen. The idea that the unsaved, the pagan, those that don't want him will see that he is standing with his people. He has remembered his mercy and in his truth towards the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth have seen the salvation of our God. There is in Josephus, he talks about how at the time when what happened to Egypt, the whole known world of that area at that time knew what happened. This didn't just happen inside of a microcosm. It wasn't inside of a bubble somewhere. The whole earth at that time in that area knew what Yahweh had done to Egypt. So his exploits are being known. They're being taken through the trade routes. They're going out like a circulatory system to other lands in trade and with caravans and other things. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all the earth. Make a loud noise and rejoice and sing praise. Sing unto the Lord with the harp and the voice of a psalm. With trumpets and sounds of cornet, make a joyful noise. And again, this isn't just a clamoring, but that it is melodic, it is beautiful, it has a reason to it. We're talking about a certain thing. It's very possible that in this kind of recitative, kind of oriented, one person goes in and maybe another person talks and another person sings, and they just follow a melodic line where they're just adding to it, staying in the tune that's going on, and they're just singing around. Let the sea roar and the fullness thereof. Let the floods clap their hands. Let the hills be joyful together. For he cometh to judge the earth. With righteousness shall he judge the world and the people with equity. I was thinking about the word equity is not the same as equality. Equality imbibes a sense of fairness. Equity is based upon what you've done. You can think of equality is everyone gets an apple. You have 5 apples or whatever. Everybody gets an apple, but they didn't do anything for that apple. Equity would be you worked harder, you get 2 apples. You didn't work as hard, you get 1. And again, salvation is by grace, but we will also be judged and given rewards for our works. Jesus even talked about this, and you get the implication here through some of the Psalms. Jesus even talked about it when he talked about the ruler that hired the men at different times of the day, paid them the same thing, but of course, those that worked for only an hour made more money that day, in a sense, because they only had to work an hour for it. But the idea being is he will reward us for what we've done in this life, not with salvation, but beyond that. So this is talking about he is a God of equity. What you put in, what you get out the other end. That giving a cup of water in the master's name will not lose his reward. So you will get a reward for the good things you do, so start doing more. But this is a psalm about equity, about the character of God, and us getting to know him better and praising him because he is worthy of this praise. Going back to Judges. We've already covered, again, Joshua, and I think we went with Othniel, and then Ehud, and Shamgar. Then we went to Deborah, and then now we've gone to Gideon. We talked about Gideon and the Midianites, how he lit the torches and broke the pitchers and shouted for the Lord of Israel and for Gideon. And the Midianites returned, and they fought upon one another. But the sons... but we had, get my stuff here, that he died and he had 70 sons. And one of those sons was named Abimelech. And Abimelech was the son of a concubine. So he wasn't just the son of a wife. He was like a concubine. Again, when we remember with Jacob, and he had 2 concubines. So these maids, if you will. So he was considered a lesser son, to tell you the truth. And we're going to see the story of Abimelech here. He goes to Shechem, and remember, Shechem was a place that kind of had a foul taste to these children going back hundreds of years. If you remember, this is the place where where Diana was raped, and 2 of the boys, Simeon and Levi, went in and told them, well, we will make peace with you, we will marry your daughters, and we will become one people. All you have to do is get circumcised. They did, but while they were in pain and healing up, they attacked the city. And excuse me, Jacob was upset because this would make them a stink in the land. Same place. So he goes in there, and his mom, this concubine, was a Shemite, a Shechemite, sorry. She was a Shechemite. He goes to his mom's family and says, hey, here's the problem. There's 70 sons over there. Do you want them lording over you or me? So they say, okay, we'll take you. And so they gave him money. They gave him 70 pieces of silver. He went and hired vain and light men. He got a bunch of mercenaries, if you will, and killed his 70 brothers so he would take the throne. And so he did that, and he became a king in Shechem over that area. And he killed all the sons but one, and Jotham tells an interesting story that he gives a parable. And he really gives a parable here that's kind of a dig at Abimelech, because his was that the tree said to a fig tree, reign over us. But the fig tree said, why would I lose my sweetness and my strength to become a king? I'm going to stay where I am because I'm lofty. And then they said that to a vine. The vine said, well, why would I give up my wine that is good for God and man to be promoted among the trees? I'm going to stay where I am. Then he talked to this bramble, the idea that this is just a thorny bush. And this thorny bush says, I will be king over you. And let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. The idea that this bramble king is going to destroy in that area because he is a bramble king. He's not a strong king. He's not a wine-giving king. He's not a beautiful king. He's a bramble. And he talks about how, for my father fought for you and adventured his life and delivered you out of Midian, and you rise up against my father this day and have slain his son 70 persons upon one stone. So here's Abimelech, the son of his maidservant, kind of puts a dig there, king over Shechem because he is your brother. So he talks about that, and let fire come down from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem and the house of Millo, and let fire come down from the men of Shechem and from the house of Millo and devour Abimelech. In other words, his prophecy here is you will devour one another. Abimelech will devour Shechem and Millo will devour Abimelech. And then Jotham, who is this young man, leaves. So Abimelech reigns for 3 years in Israel at this time as a judge. Even though they make him king, technically he's a judge. He's not a king as in like King David or King Saul, who was anointed by God or even acceptable by God. God sends an evil spirit and between Abimelech and the men of Shechem, and they deal treacherously. And so Gal, who is the son of Eber, comes in and talks to the men of Shechem and gets them to turn away from Abimelech. And he starts talking loud noises against Abimelech. Who is Abimelech and who is Shechem that we should serve you? Is not he the son of Zerubbabel? In other words, he'll turn against you just like Zerubbabel. You know, this kind of thing. He's really firing the flames. So Abimelech hears about it and goes to war with these people. And so Abimelech goes and hides in the area and comes up out of the ground with his forces to attack Shechem. So now Abimelech is fighting with Shechem. So he fights with Shechem with 3 companies. And the people of Shechem see him coming and are very afraid. And Shechem goes and defeats, Abimelech goes and defeats the people in Shechem. Then he goes over to Millo where there's a tower. And he's going to go tear down this tower, this large structure where the people would run for safety. So he goes over to take care of them. And he cuts down a lot of brooms. In other words, they cut branches to put around this tower so that they might set the tower on fire. They actually kill, what was it? They say here they kill 1,000 people that have gone for safety into this tower, and they set these up. They do a siege. They set up a lot of branches and stuff, and start a fire. Again, it's smoke and heat, and they kill 1,000 people in this temple, or in this tower, I should say. And Abimelech went from there to a place named Thebez, and he's trying to do the same thing at Thebez. And while he's pushing all of this up, while they're trying to create the same thing where they create a fire, they're moving these brambles over, they're bringing the brush, they're bringing the logs, they're bringing the trees so that they can set this fire. A woman casts a piece of millstone down, and it hits Abimelech on his head. And he asked his sword bearer to run him through so the people wouldn't say he was killed by a woman. And the young man runs him through. And so the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead. They departed every man his place. And thus God rendered the wickedness of Abimelech, which he had done unto his father in slaying the 70 brethren. Once again, we see, we talked about equity in Psalms. There's equity here. Remember in chapter 1 where they captured a king and they cut off the thumb and they cut off the big toe. And he goes, well, that's fair because I did that to 70 other kings. Here it is, God had cursed Abimelech with Jotham. And so he curses him. He says that the men of Shechem and Milo are going to turn against Abimelech, and Abimelech will turn against them, which is true. And it's only based on them getting one guy to stir up his mouth, one guy to lead a kind of a fake rebellion. He was just a loudmouth, but he gets them going. And Abimelech hears about it, and so he goes up with his people to take care of this, what looks like an insurrection. And of course, Gal, this fellow, backs down at the last minute, because even his friend said, well, where is now your mouth wherein you have said, who is Abimelech? So this whole thing gets festered up based on rumors and innuendos and stuff. And Abimelech again goes in. He destroys the people of Shechem. He goes to Milo, takes care of them, and he's at this third place, Thebez, and that's where a woman pushes a millstone down and it hits him on the head. And he's dying, and he has his sword bearer thrust him through. Again, we see the sense of poetic justice. It's what it's called, where, your snare catches you. And we saw that in many of the Psalms where people will lay a snare, and he would say, let their snare catch them. Let them get caught in their own trap. Let them fall into their own pit. All of their vices for my demise, let that happen to them. So we see this lived out here in this story. The interesting thing is Abimelech, like Sisera, was killed by a woman and was killed by a blow to the head. So again, we see some poetic justice here. Remember Sisera, he thought he was going to some place that was safe, and it wasn't. Here Abimelech, got close to the tower, thought he was safe. He wasn't. And by poetic justice, again, equity, not equality, equity. What you put forth, what you get back. This is not karma, by the way. It sounds like it, but karma does not exist. This is God using a sense of equity. And when he judges for sin, it is an equitable judgment. When Christ goes to the cross, is it an equitable and accepted judgment of wrath and righteousness to come because of that payment? The payment is accepted. It's stamped by God, acceptable with equity. We have equity now. We have peace. Once you pay off your debt to a debtor, you have peace with them. You're not in any conflict or anything anymore. We have peace with God through Christ, through a sense of equity, not equality. We are equal with Christ as adopted sons and daughters, but it was equity, the sense of value that's what redemption is. It's a value for value. $1 for $1, $1's worth of goods for $1 of money, that kind of thing. This equitable exchange, not equal. It's not equal, it's equitable. You can sell a car for whatever you want to as long as you guys have a sense of equity among yourselves. So here we have Abimelech is dead, and all the evil, and God did this for slaying the 70 brothers, and all the evil of the men of Shechem did God render upon their heads, and upon them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal. So again, he took Shechem, who was behind the coup, right after the death of Gideon. So the men of Shechem got up with Abimelech, and God judged them also. And so here we have in chapter 10, Abimelech has died, and then God raises up Tola to defend Israel, and he does that. He judges for 23 years. Then he rose up Jair, and it's interesting, he says rose up, so there must have been some sin that they were dealing with. Again, this same cycle of them getting free, sinning, rising up, them sinning, rising up. So when you see arose, so he arises up this judge, and he had 30 sons, and Jair died. Then the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and began worshiping Balaam and Ashtoreth and the gods of Syria and the gods of Sidon. It's like every time they go to sin, it gets bigger and bigger. They're taking more gods in. This gets really crazy. At first, it's just, we'll take another god. Then we'll take these gods. Now we got this god. At first, it was just Baal and Ashtoreth. Okay, 2 gods, no big deal. Now they're just taking on all gods, any god but Jehovah. And we kind of see that today in America. Any god but Jesus, we will accept as in our pantheon of acceptable deities, personalities, philosophers, teachers, whatever, but not Jesus, unless he says good things we like. Here we have Tola comes in, he judges for 23, and then Jair judges for 22. So we've got, again, another generation. It's been over 40 years. And here comes, they're doing evil, and the Lord was hot against Israel. And guess what he does? He raises up the enemies and puts them over. This time it's the Philistines. It's like he leaves these enemies to raise up. The Philistines, the Palestinians, the Canaanites, all these people are not there by accident. They're because of a sinful Israel. The Syrians and all of these groups are not there by accident. They're because of a sinful Israel. And that year they vexed them and oppressed the children of Israel 18 years. So here we have almost 20 years of being vexed by these people, and they came together in Gilead, and the children of Israel even fought with Benjamin and with the house of Ephraim, and Israel cried out to the Lord, and the Lord said, did I not deliver you from the Egyptians and from the Amorites and from the children of Ammon and from the Philistines and the Zodarians and the Amalekites and the Manoans did oppress you, and you cried to me and I delivered you out of their hand. So he's saying, didn't I already deliver you? Didn't I deliver you? Didn't I deliver you? But now he takes a different route. It goes, but you have forsaken me and served other gods. Therefore, I will deliver you no more. Go and cry unto your gods, these new gods that you have chosen. Let them deliver you. So he's really getting angry here. You're only calling out to me for deliverance. You're not just calling out to me for godliness, for righteousness. And again, we have to be careful. Sometimes when we're sharing the gospel, are we only trying to give a salvation God instead of the truly worshiping this God who's worthy of worship and praise and adoration because of who he is, not just what he has provided. All they're wanting is the peace of him, not the worship of him. But here he's saying, go. In verse 14, go to these gods. Go to these gods that you've chosen. And the people of Israel countered back, but we've sinned, and they put away their strange gods, and we've served, and from among us, and we serve the Lord in his soul. We would grieve for the misery of Israel. We're grieving. Oh my gosh, we want to serve you. And they put it away, and they repented. Then the children of Ammon were gathered together and encamped in Gilead, and the children of Israel assembled themselves at Mizpah. And the men got together and said, who will we find to fight for us? So they're in this tough place. They are calling out to God. And even though God says, go call out to your gods, they've said, no, we have sinned. Do this unto us, whatever seems good unto thee. Deliver us only, we pray thee, this day. And they put away their gods from among them and served the Lord, and his soul was grieved for the misery of Israel. I went past that a minute ago too quickly. The soul of God was grieved for the people. And even though he was angry with them and he told them, go seek your other gods, they countered with, no, we've sinned. They used repentance. Do whatever you think is good, only deliver us. So in his compassion, in his long-suffering, in his mercy, he is going to move to deliver Israel one more time. Now the people have gotten together to fight, and now they're asking, well, who's going to lead us as we go from Gilead as we go to fight the inhabitants over in Gilead? Now that's a to be continued, because tomorrow we do the story of Jephthah. But we see this whole story moving. Again, the story has gone from Adam all the way forward. It's just one big connected tale, and all these people and the causes and effects, and really it just keeps moving. One thing about these narratives, I'll try to go as carefully as I can to cover the hot button issues that I can, but read it carefully. What did I do with that? I had a piece of paper here I was going to use real quick. I'll show it next time. But the idea is to have this sense of ongoing story. Our problem is, like I've said, is we'll take little stories out and talk about them, and they're disconnected. They're like, again, I'll use the snapshot ideologue, that we will do a snapshot of something, show a picture, and put it down. The next Sunday, we'll do a snapshot of Jesus, put it down. And the next Sunday, here's Paul, and put it down. How do these things move together? How do we see how they're all connected into one big tale of God dealing with sin, of God dealing righteously with his people, of God being long-suffering, of God keeping his promises, of God working with the righteous and casting out the sinners? How do we see this tale if we keep breaking it up into little pieces thrown up on a Sunday or a Sunday night? It's not working. We need to go cradle to grave, using an evidentiary viewpoint, using a grid work mentality. Just see what's there. Don't add to it. Be very careful. I'm trying careful not to draw any conclusions, not to draw any assumptions, and certainly we've learned that God does not like presumptuousness. Anyway, let's handle the Word of God correctly and learn about our God from it and from it alone.